Part 140. Magic Planet Online Game. Author, Lanzai Cai Shi Zhenshen. Chapter 1391. On Monday, October 24, at 4:17 a.m., Xiaoming, who had eaten the poison fruit, wanted to find a place to test its power. But it was not easy to choose a place to test it. Generally speaking, bad guys who deserve to die can be found in any world. It should not be difficult to test it. But Xiaoming really wanted to try the large-scale killing ability of the poison fruit. It would be best to find a place where bad guys who deserve to die were everywhere. The first thing that came to mind was the world of Mars Alien. There were cockroaches all over Mars, and Xiaoming had used a virus to wipe out the entire race. On second thought, something was wrong. First, in that world, there had always been humans on Mars, and there were many good people among them. It would be bad if they were accidentally injured. Although the good people were poisoned, he could save them. But deliberately poisoning good people without any legitimate reason was definitely not a good thing for a king of hell. Second, no matter where he was, Xiaoming could not deliberately kill innocent people. The cockroaches on Mars are just trying to survive, they are not bad guys who deserve to die. Besides, where did the cockroaches come from? They were created by humans. How can we blame them? Back then, Xiaoming could exterminate the cockroaches on Mars because of his human position. But now he has no such freedom. Then someone will ask, isn't this asking for trouble? Being a civil servant in the underworld is actually restricting one's hands and feet. It's better to be an ordinary human and kill as much as you want. That's right. As the saying goes, if you want to wear the crown, you must bear its weight. Is it so easy to be the king of hell? Can it be the same standard as being a human? Working in the underworld, the welfare benefits are very good. At least you are free from the suffering of the 6 reincarnations. In myths and legends, this is considered a god. Shouldn't you be subject to some constraints? Even though it is difficult for Xiaoming to find a place to test the power of the poison fruit on a large scale, he has never thought of changing his mind and giving up his identity as the king of hell. Speaking of which, he has 5 bodies and 5 souls, but he can't find a place to test. It's useless. Let's count. Green Xiaoming is in the territory of the insect people, surrounded by his own people. Who can he poison? In the martial arts planet game, Huang Xiaoming cannot use supernatural powers other than martial arts. Even if he quits the game, he is still on the Sheneng 2 spacecraft. There are also his own people there. Red Xiaoming's body replaced the lizard man, Sir Scarface, and is also on the Sheneng 2 spacecraft. This is definitely not the right place. His soul is in the Quafu underworld. In the underworld, apart from Xiaoming's ghost clone, there are souls who are ready to re-enter reincarnation. Wouldn't it be crazy to poison here? Orange Xiaoming is even more doomed. He was reincarnated as a dogtail grass, and the world he lives in cannot use supernatural energy. Just stay here honestly. After thinking about it, the only one who has a chance is Silver Xiaoming. You can be unrestrained in the Magic Planet game. Xiaoming would not feel guilty if he slaughtered the Western colonists on the strategic map. Unfortunately, it is too early now, and there are still more than 3 hours before the main game starts. Xiaoming can't wait any longer. Let's just look for it in many secret realms. Anyway, if he encounters an unsuitable secret realm, Xiaoming can immediately exit and change to another one. There is always one that suits him. More than 2 hours later, Xiaoming, who randomly entered N worlds, found that it was so difficult to find a world where he could release poison without restraint. After such a long time, he has not been able to find a suitable one. Because once you put aside the subjective perspective of being a human being, many species that are hostile to humans and were previously thought to be exterminated. Now you will find that they are just trying to survive. Just like the Martian aliens, dinosaurs, ants, spiders, and so on that eat people, they have no reason to die. Xiaoming thought that maybe only a world like zombies is suitable. After all, the zombies are actually dead. It is not considered killing to release poison to them. In the game, he also had enough authority to play in the world of Resident Evil. But he finally decided to give up. There was no special reason, but after such a long time, his temper had calmed down. A large-scale poison test: if there is an opportunity in the future, try it; if there is no opportunity, forget it. There is no need to be so persistent. Of course, in the process of searching, Xiaoming still encountered a few bad guys who deserved to die. He used them to test the power of the poison fruit on a single unit, and the results made Xiaoming satisfied. That's about it. Just when he had given up the search and just planned to play around in the latest random world. Instead, he encountered a suitable secret realm, the Great Wall. If you plant flowers with care, they will not bloom, but if you plant willows without care, they will grow into shade. The ancients did not deceive me. The Great Wall, one of the feats of human civilization, has stood for thousands of years. It stretches over 10,000 miles and was built after more than 1,700 years. It defends the Chinese nation against all kinds of enemies, and there are real stories and legends. This secret realm is one of those legends. Probably because the theme of this secret realm is the Great Wall, one of the prides of Chinese civilization. The game maker put a lot of thought into it. There is actually an interesting narration at the beginning of the secret realm, as well as a grand opening music. Xiaoming was a little confused. Then, in a desert, 6 players each rode a horse and stood on a sand dune. This is not a single-player secret realm, which is quite interesting. Xiaoming checked his personal information. Name: Zhangsan. Gender: male. Identity: a clerk at a Chinese store in the north. Event: following the shopkeeper, he came to the desert to do business with the Khitan people. After the business was done, on the way back to the border, they were attacked by horse bandits, and all the heads were killed. Now there are only 6 people who have lost their way, that is, these 6 players. The game system does not give any tasks. As an ordinary person who has lost his way in the desert, finding a way to survive is the first priority. The 6 people looked at each other. They all looked blank and knew no one. A bald man in his 50s, he felt that he was the oldest among the people and should be able to start a career. Then he coughed twice and said, "Ahem, cough, how do we start?" "Well, if there are people who like to play alone, you can leave now. If you are willing to join a group to explore the secret realm, please come down. Let's discuss it." After a pause, he added, "The name of this secret realm is the Great Wall, and it must be closely related to Chinese culture. It should be a secret realm where you have the opportunity to improve your grades. It is completely different from those secret realms where you can't even figure out the basic situation at the beginning. Everyone, don't mind, let me say one more thing. I sincerely suggest that we all join together, okay? Magic Planet Online Game. Author, Lanzai Cai Shi Zhenshen. Chapter 1392. Looking at Xiaoming's back as he rode away, and the dust raised by his horse's hooves, the other 5 players had different expressions on their faces. One young man was very disdainful and spat, "Bah, what are you pretending for? You look down on others. Even if this kind of person is a game expert, I still look down on him." "Tisk," another young man said disdainfully, "you just said you wanted to hang out with others, and now you say this again. What? Are you angry because they didn't accept you?" The young man was furious, and he started with a bunch of dirty words that needed to be mosaicked. The player who was scolded was furious, and the other 3 people didn't look good. Normal people don't like people who can curse like this. Xiaoming left regardless, and the others actually had some complaints. But they also understood that everyone has their own ambitions, and they have no right to ask others to be consistent with themselves. Only this young man was shameless. He wanted to curry favor with someone, but when he was rejected, he spoke badly. Several people hated him. The bald uncle quickly stopped him. Okay, okay. Keep your mouth shut. People are willing to play by themselves, it's not your turn to talk nonsense. He may have a special mission, or he has something to hide. He didn't say he looked down on you. This brother said the truth. You are being unreasonable, it's too much. What? Who the hell do you think you are, $U0026% asterisk. The kid was spitting foul language again. Kang Lang, with a sound, the bald uncle pulled out the knife from his waist. Pointing at the young man, he said solemnly. You are such a foul-mouthed person, and you are also stupid, no one will team up with you. Now please roll your body into a ball and leave in a round shape. Otherwise, I will chop you off now. I didn't expect that he, a middle-aged man, would have such blood. The young man was young and strong, how could he be afraid of a middle-aged uncle? He immediately drew his sword and was about to fight. But the other three players drew their swords at the same time and pointed them at him. Six eyes flashed with determination. It seems that everyone has the same idea and is unwilling to team up with him. If he wants to fight with the uncle, the other three will watch him together. 1 against 4, the young man was scared on the spot. Damn, as if no one cares about you. 30 years in the east, 30 years in the west, let's wait and see. While cursing, he turned his horse's head and went in another direction, until his figure gradually disappeared in the wind and sand. The four people sheathed their swords and began to discuss the secret realm. Fortunately, there is no place to hide in the desert, otherwise we have to worry about this kid ambushing around and waiting for an opportunity to attack. Everyone, let's use the name in the secret realm. My name is Zhang Si. The young man who quarreled with the young man jumped off the horse and introduced himself. The other three also dismounted and signed up. My name is Zhang Yi. I'm Zhang Wu. Zhang Lu. Everyone smiled at each other and felt a little closer to each other. It is obvious that the game system has assigned the names of Zhang Yi to Zhang Lu to the 6 players. It seems that the young man has no human rights. Generally speaking, it is difficult for players to cooperate with each other sincerely when they meet in the secret realm. Everyone wants to get more benefits for themselves, and they are in a competitive relationship with each other. This time, Xiaoming and the bad-mouthed young man's disruption produced a catfish effect. It made them more united. Xiaoming seems to be a game master, and maybe he needs to cooperate to deal with it. The bad-mouthed young man is also a common enemy that needs to be guarded against. The four of them all think that they should work together. This secret realm is called Great Wall, and it is a desert environment here. I guess we are now north of the Great Wall. As long as we go all the way south, we should be able to reach the Great Wall. Bald Uncle Zhang Yi said this. Zhang Si and Zhang Lu both nodded in agreement. Only Zhang Wu, who has a big beard and can't tell his age, has other ideas. What Brother Yi said makes sense. I think before we go south, we can check around the birth point. Maybe there will be some clues. Several people thought this made sense. This is in the game, there may be clues near the birth point. Zhang Lu, who is handsome and can be called a young man, suddenly thought of something and began to look through his luggage. What are you looking for? Food and water. Zhang Lu took out a few pancakes and a pot of water and said, these things are enough for one person to live for 2 days at most. I don't think we have that much time. Others also looked through their luggage. Sure enough, food and water are the same. The uncle praised, Brother Lu is still smart, then let's hurry to the south. Let me see, the sun is, okay, the south is over there. Go go go. The four people rode their horses and headed south. If they were willing to look around carefully, they would find the bodies of several monsters and Zhang Er who had died. Of course, all of this was done by Xiaoming. When the secret realm just started, several players were discussing. Xiaoming released his mental power and scanned the surroundings. He immediately saw 6 green monsters with 4 limbs, 1 eye under each armpit, strange patterns on their heads, a small patch of black hair on their backs, and smooth hairless other parts. They approached the player group stealthily, a little far away. This is of course the famous monster Dowdy in the secret realm of the Great Wall. Xiaoming didn't know its name at this time, but he felt a very evil breath from this creature. The so-called evil has nothing to do with their hideous appearance. Xiaoming had contact with monsters such as Zerg, Alien. Those guys are just carnivores. Although they look ferocious and scary, they are not evil at all. This kind of monster gives Xiaoming a feeling of evil incarnation. Xiaoming feels that killing them will not only not harm his virtue, but the underworld will even give him a great merit. This is very rare. He quickly increased the scanning range and found that the more north he went, the more Dowdy appeared. This shows that that is where their nest is. The 6 Dowdy that appeared near the player may be the first test of the system for the player. One for each person. First of all, you have to find a way to survive from the mouth of the Dowdy. From the action, the combat power of a single Dowdy is very strong. The other 5 players may not be able to kill one together. This test is still quite difficult. The best way to deal with it is actually what the players are doing now. Hurry up and ride south, day and night, and you should be able to reach the border of the Great Wall before the Dowdy attacks you. With the protection of the border troops, the player's life is saved. This is why every player has a horse. Without a horse, you can't outrun the Dowdy. Xiaoming is certainly not afraid of the Dowdy. This kind of monster can be used to test the poisonous fruit. But he certainly can't take these players with him as a burden. That's why he left alone. But his mental power has been observing the situation here. He knows that Zhang Er and the other 4 have fallen out. The players split into 3 groups, and the Dowdy did the same. One group went to find Zhang Er, and the other went to chase Xiaoming. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Magic Planet Online Game. Author, Lanzai Cai Shi Zhenshen. Chapter 1393. With the speed and reaction of the 5 players, it should not be enough to avoid the attack of the Dowdy. Xiaoming faced the question of whether to intervene. If he took action, he could naturally kill the Dowdy, and even make these players feel nothing. Although the 4 players gathered together seemed to be fine, and the young man with bad breath did not look like a good person. But Xiaoming used Pluto to take a closer look. The young man really didn't do anything serious, just his mouth was not clean. The other 4 people were not spotless white lotuses. Especially the bald uncle, he was already in his 50s. More or less, intentionally or unintentionally, he had made many mistakes in his life. Now his kind character is just because he is old and has become smart. On the scale of good and bad people, the 5 of them can only be defined as ordinary people. In this case, Xiaoming can actually not intervene. Anyway, in the game, it's no big deal if the character dies. But then again, since it's a game, and since it's no big deal, it doesn't matter if Xiaoming makes a small move. Xiaoming thought that it was fate that these 5 people could meet him in the same secret realm, so let's do a test first. He used illusion on the 5 players at the same time. The scenes of the illusion were the same. They felt that they were suddenly alone, and saw a beast not far ahead preparing to attack a stranger. It depends on how they choose. Others chose to shout loudly to warn the stranger. Only Zhang Er chose to watch coldly and gloat over the misfortune. So, the people who chose to warn passed the test, and the 4 Dowdy chasing them were easily killed and eaten by Xiao Ming. And the Dowdy chasing Zhang Er was sent directly to Zhang Er by Xiao Ming, and killed Zhang Er in a few bites. Then he followed in the footsteps of his companions. The whole process of the illusion was a matter of a moment, and afterwards, their memory of the illusion was also cleared by Xiao Ming. Maybe one day in the future, they will dream of the same scene, but that's all. At this time, Xiao Ming's scanned map arrived at the border of the Great Wall. There was an army with bright armor stationed at the border. There were 5 different colors of soldiers and armor, calling themselves the Shadowless Forbidden Army. After casually scanning a few people's minds, Xiao Ming knew the background information of this secret realm. He also learned the official name of this monster. Although there are nomadic tribes outside the Great Wall here. But the Great Wall and the Shadowless Forbidden Army exist not for them, but to guard against a terrible monster army. It is said that there is a monster outside the Great Wall that feeds on humans. Every 60 years, they will gather in human territory to find food. Humans call it Dowdy. Once they break through the Great Wall defense line and invade the Central Plains, China will surely suffer. It is not impossible to be destroyed. Dowdy, also known as the Royal, is said to be one of the 4 great beasts in ancient times. Legend has it that Emperor Xianyuan fought against Chu, and Chu was beheaded, and his head fell to the ground and turned into Dowdy. This is of course just a myth. In the history of Pangustar, Dowdy might have been pretended by some optical brain. But no matter which legend it is, Dowdy should be a unique and terrible monster. It is not a general term for a certain type of monster. Xiao Ming has only entered the secret realm for a while, and has seen many of them, and their strength is just so-so. Is it really okay to name them Dowdy? It may be because the humans here think that this monster meets some of the characteristics of Dowdy, and they forcibly add the legendary name to them. It is meaningless to quibble with the secret realm about the story background. People have set it up like this, so we just play normally. Dowdy is just a name. The Dowdy that chased Xiao Ming did not die as early as his companions. It did not know that it was deliberately let go by the human. It was sneaking up on Xiao Ming. When the time was right, it pounced with its bloody mouth full of fangs, and was about to bite off the back of Xiao Ming's neck. Then, an invisible force descended, pressing it down in the sand. Its limbs flapped vigorously, raising countless dust, but it could not stand up. The eyes under the armpit saw that its prey actually walked in front of it and was observing it. Xiao Ming was certainly not afraid of a lone Dowdy. Letting it rush to him was also to see how capable this guy was and whether he could live up to the name of Dowdy. Now it seems that it is just the combat power of an ordinary alien. I don't see any special skills. Xiao Ming tried to use Zerg Conquer on it, but it didn't work at all. Try telepathy again, but it's useless. The other party's heart is as simple as a blank sheet of paper. Dowdy seems to have thick skin and strong vitality, but in front of Xiao Ming's attack power, it is no different from paper. After being broken by Xiao Ming's various tricks, it was poisoned to death. At this time, a strange thing happened. Xiao Ming's Quafu underworld was unable to receive its soul. In theory, this should never happen. As the king of the underworld, Xiao Ming's soul will be sucked into his underworld for all the lives lost around him. However, this is a game, which is another matter. When the player character dies, the player's soul will naturally return to the other person's body. Only when the NPC dies, the soul may be sucked away by the Quafu underworld. As mentioned in the previous article, Xiao Ming took away 100 female ghosts headed by Nai Xiaoqian from the secret realm of a Chinese ghost story. They can enter the Quafu underworld. And at that time, Xiao Ming found that only about 10 of the 100 ghosts were the kind of souls he was familiar with, and the remaining 90 female ghosts were really just intelligent programs. He couldn't figure this out. Was the underworld confused? Soul gems shouldn't make such mistakes. Later, Xiaoming also noticed that not every NPC that died near Xiaoming's character would be accepted by the underworld. Most of the intelligent programs recognized by the underworld are relatively advanced. The underworld does not accept the low-level ones. This made Xiaoming very confused. In fact, as long as I ask my master a cha, I believe there will be an answer. However, Xiaoming's intuition tells him that as the king of the underworld, he should figure this out himself. Moreover, he already has some vague clues. But he needs to continue to comprehend for a while. In comparison, the monster Dowdy is another completely new situation. It seems to be a low-level intelligent program, but it gives Xiaoming an extremely strange feeling. At this time, Xiaoming only wants to kill Dowdy's lair. The purpose was no longer just to test the AoE ability of the poison fruit. He wanted to see what a high-level Dowdy would be like. Would his soul return to the underworld after death? He hoped to solve the doubts in his heart. Magic Planet Online Game. Author, Lanzai Cai Shi Zhenshen. Chapter 1394. 2 days later in the Secret Realm, a quarter of an hour later in real time, Zhang Yi, Zhang Si, Zhang Wu, and Zhang Lu, 4 players, arrived at the majestic Great Wall border. One of the original 4 horses died. Halfway through, a horse stepped on empty air and fell from the high school, breaking its leg. The few people did not dare to waste it, so they killed the horse and cut it into 8 pieces. Even the horse blood was collected. When they were cleaning up these things, several people vomited miserably. Never expected that the 4 people took turns riding 3 horses and arrived at the border so quickly. If they had known this, they would not have killed the horses. In fact, killing horses was very correct. It was because of this that the system allowed them to see the border earlier. Otherwise, there might be other tests. Looking up at the Great Wall, the 4 players were not shocked by this world-renowned wonder. Because on Pangustar, the later Qin Empire and the new Han Kingdom have always protected the Great Wall very well. Although this Great Wall has lost its defensive function. But the descendants of Yan and Huang did not give up on it and let it be gradually eroded by nature. No matter how bad the local natural environment is, the government insists on properly maintaining each section of the Great Wall. The manpower and material resources consumed every year are absolutely astronomical. But from emperors and generals to ordinary people, everyone expressed support. Not only because this wall is the pride of China, nor is it just because the country is financially strong and can afford it. More importantly, people from other Chinese countries, as long as their economic conditions allow, will always come to the new Han Kingdom to see the Great Wall in their lifetime. Brought a lot of tourism consumption. Therefore, the Great Wall of the new Han Kingdom is still as majestic as when it was built. There is no difference in this one, so it will not cause much shock. The 4 players all look like Han people, and they also reported to the garrison when they left the border. After a little check, they got permission to enter the customs. Walking on the Bluestone Road, a burst of ancient and desolate Kinkiang came from afar, as if singing and shouting. The bright moon in Qin and the pass in Han, the people of the long march of thousands of miles have not returned. But if the flying general of Longcheng is here, the Hu horses will not be allowed to cross the Yinshan Mountains. The smoke of war is thousands of miles away in the mass graves, and no one visits the lonely souls in the troubled times. The sky is speechless and the pen and ink are cold, and the penknife pays with blood in the spring and autumn period. The 4 people have average hearing, but they just feel a little noisy and interesting, but they don't care too much. On the contrary, Xiaoming, who pays part of his attention here, likes it very much. The first 4 sentences are from a group of frontier poems, 2 frontier poems by Wang Changling, a poet of the Tang dynasty. The artistic conception of the poem is majestic and profound, which is both exciting and intriguing. It complements the Kinkiang. Xiaoming has never heard of the last 4 sentences. It also feels quite good to him. He is also a talent for writing lyrics. Xiao Ming's mental power swept through the shadowless forbidden army at the border here. It feels that it is indeed a strong army with strict discipline and excellent equipment. The most important thing is high morale. They almost all hold the determination to die and guard here. There is only one army with such a good spirit in the history of Pangustar. That is the powerful army of the later Qin dynasty. Later, the armies of the Chinese countries were basically born out of this team, but it was difficult to reach the height of their predecessors. This is not surprising. After all, after the establishment of the Chinese countries, there were not many wars. The army did not get enough training. Nowadays, perhaps the space army of the new Han Kingdom has the opportunity to catch up with its predecessors. I hope they can be trained stronger in the battle with the Zerg. This shadowless forbidden army is so strong that 1,800 Daudi are not its opponents at all. Such a strong army guarding the border just shows that the number of Daudi is likely to be extremely large. Just when Xiao Ming was thinking about it, two groups of people came outside the border wall, one chasing and one fleeing. Everyone has weapons on them. The group chasing behind looks like Khitans or Turks, and it is normal to appear here. The two fleeing in front actually have European faces. Europe is quite far away from here, and it is remarkable that they can come here alive. The book Ancient Strange People once described that in the history of a parallel world, there was an Italian named Marco Polo. He claimed to have been to China. It is said that when he was 17 years old, he followed his father and uncle to the east along the Silk Road, passing through the Mesopotamian Basin, the Iranian Plateau, and the Pamir Plateau. It took 4 years to reach Dadu of the Yuan dynasty. He traveled in China for 17 years and claimed to have served as an official of the Yuan dynasty and visited many places in China at that time, including Yunnan and the southeastern coastal areas. Later, he returned to his hometown as an envoy of the Yuan dynasty. After returning to Italy, Marco Polo was captured in a naval battle. In prison, he dictated a lot of stories about China, and his cellmate Rusticiano wrote the famous The Travels of Marco Polo. According to legend, he brought two Chinese delicacies back to Italy. One is fried noodles with soybean paste, and the other is pie. As time went by, local ingredients replaced the original ingredients, and noodles became pasta, and pie became pizza. This is just for fun, and the true origin is no longer traceable. Whether Marco Polo really came to the Central Plains in the parallel world of Earth, it is a controversial topic. There are many arguments for both sides. It is not surprising that others doubt it. There are many errors in his book, some of which are quite different from the historical records of the Yuan dynasty. It is more like hearsay and self-praise. However, this book was not written by Marco Polo himself, but by his cellmate. It is very likely that there was a lot of bragging in what he said at the time. People have nothing to do in prison, so it's not strange to brag and chat with their cellmates. Besides, a person's memory is unreliable. If Marco Polo wrote a diary every day when he traveled in the Central Plains, the accuracy would be much higher. But that's not the case. He recalled these things that happened more than 10 or 20 years ago in prison after returning home. It's normal to have big discrepancies. Of course, since Marco Polo is not a more reliable scholar, he may just want to get attention and become famous. Mixing things heard from other businessmen together and pretending that they are his own experiences. There are really many such people in the world. Xiao Ming had a classmate who loved to do this kind of thing before college. One day, the two chatted and talked about an absolute. The man slightly changed the couplet written by the ancients, pretended that it was his own, and said it out, which earned Xiao Ming a lot of admiration. Later, Xiao Ming checked the information and found out the truth, but he didn't say much, and didn't go out of his way to slap his friend in the face. Because by that time, Xiao Ming had seen more ugliness and beauty in society. The focus was on ugliness. His friend's little vanity could not cause Xiao Ming to be disgusted. It was not a big evil, a matter of right and wrong. On the contrary, Xiaoming thought he was a little cute. If he was exposed at the beginning, how embarrassing would it be? Is it worth taking such a big risk for a little vanity? Magic Planet Online Game. Author, Lanzai Cai Shi Zhenshen. Chapter 1395. The two foreigners came to China, and they might not have any good intentions. Xiaoming took a peek into their thoughts. William Guerin and Pero Tovar were two mercenaries. They came to China this time to steal black gunpowder. When they set out, there were a total of 30 mercenaries in the team, but now there are only 2 of them. The others died in the more than 6 months of hard journey. The last few dead were killed by the scouts of the Daudi, which can be regarded as a gain of experience before death. It is just as the Chinese saying goes, if you hear the truth in the morning, you can die in the evening. As for the Daudi that attacked them, William, who had rich combat experience, cut off one of its front claws and fell off the cliff. I don't know if it's dead. Such a terrifying monster, maybe there are brothers and sisters looking for food nearby. The two were so scared that they ran away overnight with the claw. This run lasted for 2 days. Today, they didn't encounter that kind of monster again, but they were spotted by a group of kittens and chased closely. Finally, in a panic, they came to the border of the Great Wall. Foreigners did not have the same treatment as those Han players. The archers upstairs blocked their way with a circle of accurate arrows. This was just a warning. If they dared to take another step forward, they would immediately become hedgehogs. No matter how strong the two were, they were powerless in the face of the army. In front of them was the city of China, and behind them were the pursuers of the Khitan people. William and Peru had no choice but to dismount and surrender, and were tied up and taken into the city. Xiaoming had no intention of following the next plot, because he had already found his target. A large group of Daudi were moving towards the border all over the mountains and plains. The density was almost the same as that of the Zerg. There were at least hundreds of thousands of them. There must be a general leader among so many Daudi. Sure enough, Xiaoming found the leader in the herd without much effort. I have to say that he looks a bit ugly. Maybe it's just a small leader. Its physique is not much bigger than other Daudi. It looks slightly different from ordinary Daudi. There are 2 soft horns on the top of its head, and a thin membrane is spread between the soft horns. It gives orders by vibrating the sound waves generated by the membrane. On the backs of other Daudi, there is an organ under the black hair that can receive this sound. This method is certainly not as high-end and classy as the Zerg's mental communication, but it is also quite good. There are always dozens of Daudi with obviously strong physiques protecting it around it. It is probably the existence of the guards. There are some organs around their heads, which look like a round shield when opened, which is very strong. Dozens of round shields put together can form a solid fortress. It's a bit interesting. However, compared with the Zerg, the arms of the Daudi clan are still too poor. If nothing else, there should be at least some long-range arms. In fact, there are none, they are all a group of melee soldiers. More importantly, they are still a land race. They don't even have an air force, let alone a space army. I couldn't communicate with ordinary Daudi spirits before, but this Daudi leader should be able to communicate, right? Being able to command such a large army to fight, it means that his IQ should not be low. Xiaoming used his mental power to invade his brain and found that this guy's IQ was indeed high, but he was still a completely uncommunicative object. It was absolutely impossible to subdue him. When thinking of the notoriety of the 4 ancient beasts of Daudi, Xiaoming understood a little. This is not a normal and rational creature. It is a special existence. According to several generals in the shadowless Forbidden Army, this thing appears once every 60 years and attacks the Great Wall from the north. If they can't be stopped, there will be a world-destroying disaster. It does not conform to the laws of biology. Instead, it is a bit like the subordinates of the devil in Western legends. Xiaoming has no psychological burden when killing them. Even if they can be subdued, Xiaoming will only subdue a few for fun at most, and the others will still be completely eliminated. The Dowdy suddenly found that a purple mist began to rise on the road ahead, becoming thicker and thicker. The Dowdy leader thought about it for a few seconds, and then continued to move forward without intending to bypass the fog. Just rush through. Anyway, the Great Wall is not far ahead. At first, nothing happened. The Dowdy army rushed into the fog and continued to move forward. There were no enemies or traps. Even the leader and the guards rushed into the fog. As the fog became thicker and thicker, the Dowdy's vision was gradually blocked, and they could no longer see the road in the distance. They just instinctively followed the tribesmen in front of them and ran. The fog inhaled into the body and attached to the surface of the body began to make the Dowdy feel uncomfortable. Because the fog is corrosive and poisonous. But none of them cared, including the leader. Originally, the Dowdy was a fearless race. And this level of corrosiveness did not cause much damage. The Dowdy tribe knew the location and distance of the border, which was not far ahead. The fog should stop spreading there. So they thought they would not be poisoned too deeply. If this fog even spread to the border, it would be even better. Wouldn't the fog be more harmful to weak humans? They could win without fighting. Little did they know that after running for a long time, the leader felt something was wrong. How come they haven't reached the border after running for so long? It was sure that the army under its command had been charging forward and had not turned around. What exactly happened? The leader stopped running and sent out a sound wave signal, hoping that the Dowdy army would stop and go to all directions to take a look. But it unexpectedly discovered that its command signal was not working. It vaguely saw the Dowdy in the distance still rushing forward, and it didn't seem to receive any orders at all. Just when it wanted to learn more about the situation, a large amount of purple liquid appeared beside it and the guards. This venom is naturally more lethal than the poison mist. After only 3 seconds of contact, it and the guards let out a tragic roar. The skin began to rot and decay. A minute later, it turned into dozens of Dowdy corpses. Before it died, it couldn't understand why the Dowdy army ran past not far from it, but none of its subordinates saw its miserable situation or heard its screams. Did it rebel? What it couldn't understand even more was that this venom was confined to a transparent cubic space and didn't flow out at all. It seemed to be specially designed to poison them. In terms of anti-poison ability, it and the guards were more than 10 times stronger than ordinary Dowdy. The fog that could harm ordinary Dowdy on the periphery was completely ineffective against them. Xiaoming discovered this and used liquid poison to deal with it. Focus on key targets. As for the ordinary Dowdy on the periphery, they continued to run for another day and night before they were completely poisoned to death. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Magic Planet Online Game. Author, Lanzai Cai Shi Zhen Shen. Chapter 1396. This poison was made by Xiaoming after a lot of effort. After killing a few ordinary Dowdy at first, he knew that Dowdy was a monster with a large number but not very strong individually. To deal with this kind of monster, you don't need a very strong toxin, but the amount required will be very huge. Under normal circumstances, the poison produced by the Devil Fruit ability user will harm all creatures when the poison fruit is activated. But this is not in line with Xiaoming's intention. Once the Dowdy spreads the poison to other species, or other animals are infected after eating the corpse of the Dowdy, and the poison is endless, wouldn't it be bad? The most important thing is that this place is not far from the border of the Great Wall. According to military common sense, the shadowless Forbidden Army should often send scouts to the north. When the scouts see the bodies of the poisoned Dowdy, they will definitely take 1 or 2 back for research. As a result, the poison was accidentally caused to spread, and most of the shadowless forbidden army was poisoned to death, which would be troublesome. Therefore, when Xiao Ming was developing the ability of the poison fruit, he focused on the target orientation. Only create highly targeted toxins. The toxins he created this time only work on Dowdy. It is harmless to other species. If he wants to poison people in the future, he will make the kind of poison that only makes people weak but not dead. It is a tribute to the poisonous medicine King Wu Chen. In fact, Xiao Ming also thought that this is just a secret realm of the game after all. After the main storyline is over, this secret realm will end and disappear. Even if the body of Dowdy is full of poison, the shadowless forbidden army has no time to be poisoned. Maybe it is not necessary to be so cautious. However, Xiao Ming, who has been to many secret realms or reincarnation worlds, knows that some stories have sequels. If the Great Wall has a sequel. The next time Xiao Ming randomly goes to the secret realm of the Great Wall 2, the system calculates and finds that humans may have been exterminated by the poison he released. How much sin will he bear? Of course, in fact, this secret realm has no sequel. The original work itself is a complete story. There is no clue to shoot a sequel. In addition, the response to the original work was not very good, and the motivation to produce a sequel was lost. But Xiao Ming didn't know these things. He could only deal with it according to the possibility of a sequel. Make a toxin that only targets Dowdy. When Xiao Ming saw the Dowdy army all over the mountains, he was not surprised. He had seen many dense armies. He even prepared a response plan. Why can't the Dowdy army run to the border in one direction? That's because Xiao Ming used the space-time gate to connect the head and tail of the Dowdy army, forming a closed loop. The Dowdy running at the front of the army passed through the space-time gate and instantly ran to the back of the team. This cycle repeats until the Dowdy accumulates enough toxins in their bodies and dies. If it were other intelligent races, the vanguard suddenly ran to the end of the team, and the grassroots officers would definitely find the problem. Either report to higher authorities or stop temporarily, and some countermeasures can always be made. For example, the Zerg will not fall into such a superficial trap. But the wisdom of ordinary Dowdy is too low. After receiving the order, they will not think about it anymore and just run forward. So it is not good for soldiers to have low IQ. This is why the clone army replaced the robot army in the world of Star Wars. On the other hand, the number of Dowdy troops is too large. Even if they are arranged in a column, they are quite wide when viewed horizontally. Although Xiao Ming opened the space-time gate very wide, there are still a few Dowdy who may run beyond the edge of the space-time gate. So Xiao Ming sent some 7 Yao Shadow clones to guard on both sides. If they encountered Dowdy running off the track, they would directly use the ability of flying swordsmanship to eliminate them. Anyway, the battlefield was filled with poisonous fog and visibility was very low, and other Dowdy could not see these unexpected situations. The only trouble was the Dowdy leader with a higher IQ. In fact, this so-called leader is the Beast King of the Dowdy clan. As long as it is killed, all the Dowdy will die. From a certain perspective, ordinary Dowdy is actually just the clone of the Beast King. When the mother body dies, the clones will also die. Unfortunately, Xiao Ming didn't know there was such a trick. He didn't know that the leader was the Beast King. Otherwise, the plot would have ended long ago. The main reason is that the Beast King is too weak and not outstanding at all. It is difficult for Xiao Ming to imagine that it is the ultimate big boss. Besides, he came to test the poisonous fruit with the Dowdy this time. Even if he knew the trick, he would practice with the Dowdy army first. Until the end of the plot, Xiao Ming didn't know about this peculiar setting. Because he was worried that the Dowdy leader, Beast King, would make a reasonable response, he put the leader and his guards into Guangmingding in advance. Let them think they are still in the army. In fact, the scenes of the Daodi army passing by the Beast King were all projected by Xiaoming. In fact, the Beast King and the Daodi army were already in different spaces. Therefore, when it found something wrong, it could not control its army. It was also because of this that when the Beast King was poisoned to death by Xiaoming, the Daodi army did not suffer the same fate. The strange connection between them could not cross the barriers of space. In particular, this spatial barrier was created by Xiaoming. After destroying the Daodi army with poison, Xiaoming was still thinking about what to do next. Because he always thought that this army was just the vanguard, and there would be stronger ones behind. The result was beyond his expectation, and the system quickly gave a prompt. Congratulations to the player character Zhang San for clearing the Great Wall Secret Realm. The result is extremely good, and you can choose one of the following 3 rewards. Is that all? Xiaoming was stunned for a moment, and then he reacted. This is right. After all, the Magic Planet game will not limit Xiaoming's ability. If he exerts his full strength, if the energy level of the secret realm is not very high, there will indeed be a crushing effect. At this time, several generals of the Shadowless Forbidden Army are interrogating William Garin and Pero Tovar. Those players are not bad, and they have the qualification to listen to the class. Seeing William Garin's appearance, Zhang Yi showed joy on his face. He recognized Matt Damon's appearance. Because he has met people with this appearance in other secret realms. It is definitely the protagonist in that secret realm. Seeing this face again, Zhang Yi immediately determined that William should be the protagonist of the Great Wall Secret Realm. At the very least, he is one of the protagonists. As long as players follow this person closely and have a good relationship with him, they should be able to get good results. To some extent, this is also a kind of golden finger. However, a pie suddenly fell from the sky, and before they could do anything, the system announced the end of this secret realm, and they also passed it. Magic Planet Online Game. Author, Lanzai Cai Shi Zhen Shen. Chapter 1397. The secret realm in the Magic Planet game is different from the setting of the reincarnation world. At the end of the reincarnation world, the reincarnators who participated in the same mission world will gather in the settlement space to receive rewards. By the way, they can also keep in touch with each other. If you think the other party is good, leave contact information with each other, and you can communicate with each other through the space channel in the future. The setting of the game's secret realm is completely different. After the end, the players immediately parted ways and went back to their own homes and mothers. There was no opportunity for everyone to keep in touch. After Xiaoming cleared the Great Wall plotline, the other 4 people also successfully cleared the level. They can get basic clearance rewards. Since they did not make any contributions in the battle, they can only get the most basic rewards. It is also a choice of 3. They can choose a weapon of the Shadowless Forbidden Army as a general weapon. Faced with this reward, the 4 people all cried out in their hearts that it was a pity. It would have been better to follow Zhang San at the beginning. However, seeing that he looked like he would not allow strangers to enter, he probably would not allow everyone to follow. The 4 players were not stupid. They had been together and had not done anything, but they had cleared the secret realm. This meant that it was definitely not the credit of their group. The player who really cleared the secret realm was either Zhang Er, the one with bad breath, or Zhang San, who left first. Comparing the performance of the 2 before, the 4 knew that the person who cleared the secret realm must be Zhang San. Thinking about the figure of the other person leaving in a chic manner, they could not help but sigh. It is indeed the style of a master, and he is different from ordinary people like us. Moreover, Zhang Yi thought more deeply, and the feeling of regret became stronger. Because he did not contribute enough, he could not get black gunpowder as a reward. If he could get the black gunpowder, he could bring it to the adventure map of the main game. That might open a new era for the Song Dynasty. Although, in the game, the Song Dynasty already had black gunpowder. Liangshan hero Hongtian Li Lingzhen was an expert in artillery. It was only because of the corruption and incompetence of officials in the Song dynasty that gunpowder was not promoted. Moreover, the gunpowder produced in the secret realm of the Great Wall is even more powerful. Zhang Yi's idea is indeed a good way. If it is operated well, the possibility of realization is very high. It is really a pity. His merits are not enough, but Xiao Ming's merits are enough. Among Xiao Ming's rewards, one of them is a large number of black gunpowder weapons, gunpowder arrows, thunder bombs, etc. Bringing these things into the adventure map can definitely innovate some of the weapons of the Song dynasty. Get considerable credit. Unfortunately, Xiao Ming now looks down on black gunpowder and did not choose it. The other two options are 100 ordinary gluttons and 300 shadowless imperial guards. The military branch can choose one of the 5 major arms of the imperial army: crane, eagle, bear, tiger, and deer. And you will also get the commander of the unit. There is no doubt that in this competition, the crane army led by General Lin Mei stood out. From top to bottom, this legion is almost all heroic and beautiful beauties. No matter how powerful they are, as long as they are summoned, the effect of boosting our army's morale will definitely be great. Even their blue armor is so pleasing to the eye. Xiao Ming didn't even think carefully and directly chose this legion. It can be said that he made a very heartfelt choice. Although the combat power of 100 Daodi is high, Xiao Ming doesn't need this little combat power at all. So General Lin Mei of level 3 and his 299 female soldiers of the Crane army of level 2 occupied the 8th grid of the summoning cube. As soon as you look at the rank, you can tell that the combat power of this legion is not worth expecting. But in the magic cube, they are not the worst group. The weakest should be the 3rd level 30 rural killing zombies Bonner family. Although their rank is a little higher, there are only a few kittens and they are slow. In any case, they are not as good as Lin Mei's 300 cranes. Moreover, Xiao Ming can strengthen the summoned creatures in the magic cube. The ghosts from the secret realm of a Chinese ghost story have been transformed. Other monsters, such as the Alien Queen, Nightmare Ghost Freddy, etc., are too ugly to attract Xiao Ming's interest in training. The combat effectiveness of Seleka, Nobu, Mo, etc. has basically been finalized, and their strength is not weak, so there is no need to train them more. Well, these are just excuses. Xiao Ming is attracted by the appearance of the Crane army and wants to improve their strength. The reason is simple. Only when the strength is strong can they be summoned frequently to be pleasing to the eye. If they are always a group of level 2 soldiers, they are afraid that they will be killed by the enemy, right? Xiao Ming has already thought about their strengthening direction. I heard that the Force and the Crane army are the best match. The characteristic of the shadowless Forbidden army is the great spirit of sacrifice. In order to ensure the survival of mankind, each of them is willing to fight against the vicious Daodi army and sacrifice their lives for it. This spirit will definitely win the favor of the bright side of the Force. In addition, because of the Kyber crystal weapon system developed by Xiao Ming. As long as they master the light side of the Force, they can use weapons such as lightsabers and energy shields. Although their attributes have not changed much, their combat effectiveness has increased dramatically. Especially their leader Lin Mei. With her beauty, aptitude, after practicing the Force, she is likely to become a Jedi Master. By that time, the Daodi army was not taken seriously by them. No matter how tenacious their vitality was, they would surely die if they were cut in half by a lightsaber. Of course, it takes a certain amount of time to train them, and cultivating the Force is not something that can be done overnight. In the short term, their biggest role is still just to be pleasing to the eye. It is said that people feel refreshed when they are happy. Xiao Ming was happy and thought of a good idea. Make a small adjustment to the deployment of his strategic map. Xiao Ming used the space-time gate to send the announcer and his troops to the American continent. The announcer is the only character in Xiao Ming's hand who has the skill Death Harvest on his personal panel. The undead soldiers he obtained with the Death Harvest can be directly incorporated into his command. Due to the invasion of European colonists in the American continent, there are excellent places to use the Death Harvest everywhere on the entire continent. This is the best place for the announcer to play. Of course, the announcer's magic power is limited. If Xiao Ming is not online, he can only harvest a little bit. There will not be such an exaggerated thing as creating an army of 100,000 undead at once. However, a little bit of effort can make a lot, and under the operation of the intelligent program, the dead will be able to quickly establish a huge force in the Americas. He and the researcher will join forces to defeat the Escant army earlier. By then, even Tia's Kunyan Velas forces will be able to return to the Americas. Magic Planet Online Game. Author, Lanzai Cai Shi Zhenshen. Chapter 1398. In the following week, what happened in Central America in the main game of Magic Planet unfolded basically as Xiao Ming expected. The first thing to face was Luque Tomato's distrust. The forces of Kunyan Varus relied on the researcher, not the teller of the dead. It is understandable that Luque could not easily trust a guy who suddenly appeared. Master Researcher, you are a human. I call on my people to join you, and they can barely accept it. But this undead wizard. Brother Luque, you are worrying too much. It won't be long before the undead transformed by your ancestors will appear everywhere on this land. By then, the teller of the dead may be more popular than me. That's right, Tomato was fooled by the researcher at once. If Xiao Ming hadn't seen that Luque didn't have so many twists and turns in his mind, he would have used another darker reason. For example, the famous saying, "I am doing this for your own good." Imagine that if the researchers always show up, their fame and influence will inevitably grow, and they may eventually become the saviors in the eyes of the Indians. After that, wouldn't the Chinese occupy the magpie's nest? Replace the ruling position of the local Indians. How can Tia restore the Inca Empire? Luque can definitely understand and accept this. But it will open a relatively dirty and dark door for him. Xiao Ming really doesn't want to lead him astray. Even compared with Tia and others, Luque is the most determined person among the Indians Xiao Ming has seen to resist colonization and oppression. Seeing him, Xiao Ming couldn't help but think of the people who read in ancient strange people who were qualified to be engraved on the monument to the people's heroes. It's better not to lead him astray. Xiao Ming will help the Indians fight against the invaders. But he doesn't plan to extend the rule of the Ming Empire here. Because the Ming Empire was also very corrupt at this time. The landlord class, royal relatives, merchants, and warlords in China, none of them are good people. They are probably better than the European colonists, but they are probably very limited. You can't drive a tiger out of the front door and let a wolf in the back door. Once they define the Indians as barbarians, which is very likely, I really don't know what they will do. Maybe other players can do this from the perspective of the Chinese. There are countless online novels that Xiao Ming has read that do this. That's fine. But Xiao Ming, as a civil servant in the underworld, does not have this qualification. He can consider establishing his own country here. But he is not interested in this for the time being. Of course, these ideas have nothing to do with Xiao Ming pushing the task of the researcher to the informer of the dead. He asked the informer of the dead to come here just to prevent the undead troops harvested by the death from being completely wasted. To get some benefits for himself. To be honest, if you miss this opportunity, you will miss it. European colonists did not do this to Africa. Because compared with America, the natives of Africa have seen some of the world and know how to use firearms. They would also be stronger in terms of military force. So the colonists did not dare to carry out genocide-style massacres in Africa. Turning this place into a colony would be the end. How wicked the Europeans were. They used a new strategy, which was to buy black slaves. They used money to instigate the African natives to kill each other, and bought the captives as slaves. These slaves were mainly sent to America. Although a large number of Africans died, they did not die as many as Indians. And this kind of death was often caused by the killing of each other among the indigenous tribes. The colonists were much less likely to die personally. Therefore, death harvest is far less useful in Africa than in America. In addition, according to the book The Strange Man of the Far Island, the Australian Aborigines were also severely harmed by the colonists. However, since the Aborigine population in Australia was not large, the conditions in America were not formed. America's 80 million people were almost extinct. The Australian Aborigines originally had only a few 100,000 people, which was too few. It was precisely because of their sparse population that they did not pose a threat to the colonists. Therefore, they were not slaughtered so cruelly. Staying here just to show off. Europeans who just experienced the Renaissance claim to be the most civilized group. They often do some self-contradictory things. Typical want to be that and establish that. Of course, the real reason is that political forces with different views and positions within Europeans are playing games with each other. There is also a contempt chain between them. For example, some merchants who do other business will despise those slave traders. It is normal that the same rice feeds 100 kinds of people. In fact, their exploitation of colonies is the same. It's just that some people are more concealed. The root cause is still determined by the exploitative nature of capital. This is also the reason why Xiaoming always thinks that the Zerg and the Protoss are more civilized than humans. Humans are currently unable to eliminate exploitation, but others have done it. He has to admit it. The rich are enjoying wine and meat while the poor are freezing to death on the streets. It is not a good thing to say. On Pangustar, since the time traveler established the later Qin dynasty at the end of the Tang dynasty, the Chinese nation has been the leader of the world. I have never tasted the feeling of being exploited, oppressed, or even massacred. If Xiaoming had not read The Strange Man from the Far Island several times and knew the sufferings endured by the Chinese people in another world, he probably would not have hated this kind of thing so much. I have also thought about what I would do if I traveled to a similar world. I didn't expect the game to give me the opportunity. However, in the game, it is extremely difficult to fight against the originally very powerful European forces. Although Xiaoming has S-level strength now, he can only play a limited role in the game. At least he can't transform into a dragon warrior. What's more, there are not only S-level/level 8 NPCs in the game, but also level 9 and 10 NPCs, and there are even gods behind them. Xiaoming is not qualified to fight. I still have to upgrade honestly and follow the system plotline step by step. I just hope that the creator of the game has arranged a plot for China to finally cleanse Europe. It is estimated that there is a possibility. However, it will definitely take a long time. Xiaoming is very unhappy. Look, someone sent a pillow when he was sleeping. The fact that the American continent can be widely harvested by death gave Xiaoming a comfort. Let the natives who were slaughtered by the colonists stand up again in the posture of the undead, take revenge, and kill the colonists. This feeling is even more satisfying than the arrival of the Chinese army to rescue America. Let the colonists have less good days. As for the deceased taking this opportunity to replenish the army, it is just a free ride. How much command ability does he have? Together with the 7 young generals under his command, there are only a few thousand people. It is a drop in the ocean, and it does not affect the overall situation at all. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Magic Planet Online Game. Author, Lanzai Cai Shi Zhenshen. Chapter 1399. Once in a cartoon, Xiaoming saw a scene. He was young at that time and felt it was quite shocking. Tens of thousands of bone dragons, black warriors, death knights, and other high-level undead soldiers were arranged in a neat square formation to welcome their master. It was so handsome. After playing the game, Xiaoming always planned to use the dead teller to recreate that classic scene. However, bone dragons, black warriors, and death knights are too advanced. The dead teller has only one minor bone dragon as a mount so far. The others have not been obtained yet. Xiaoming has a lot of low-level skeleton soldiers of level 1-3. But they don't have the ability to be arranged neatly at all, they are just a group of rabble. On October 26, outside a dilapidated Universal Temple in Central America, Xiaoming mobilized a lot of mana and used the dead teller to launch the magic that only he, a player, mastered, Death Harvest. Xiaoming is already a little tired of this scene. Thousands of skeleton soldiers, of all kinds, emerged from the earth. A huge group of them. It was not even close to the scene in the cartoon. It was like one in the sky and one in the stinking ditch. Among the undead harvested by the death, the 4th level flying skeleton soldiers and skeleton heavy cavalry were already the strongest types of soldiers. And they were nothing in front of the adult bone dragon. After all, if the corpse was originally of low rank, it would naturally not be able to harvest 2 strong skeleton soldiers. The appearance of 4th level soldiers was all due to the skeleton specialization talent of the deceased. One of the characteristics of the Native American Indians is the lack of high-level soldiers. Otherwise, they would not have been bullied so badly by the Europeans. Fortunately, after being transformed into undead, flying skeletons and skeleton heavy cavalry are both absolutely strategic types of soldiers. Indians became stronger after death than they were in life. The importance of flying skeletons is needless to say. They can cross the obstacles of terrain, cross city walls, cross rivers, lakes, and seas, and rush to the enemy. The most powerful one is to suppress the ranged troops. Skeleton heavy cavalry is not bad either. Compared with flying skeletons, they have higher health, and the spears and giant shields in their hands bring more powerful attack and defense. It's a pity that there are too few of them. Xiaoming pays great attention to picking up and managing the family. Before the dead teller launched the magic, he temporarily put all his troops into Pingnan City. The command power of the dead teller and his generals was vacated, hoping to receive more new soldiers. Now Xiaoming doesn't dare to expect bone dragons or anything. If he can bring all the 4th level troops, that would be very impressive. But in fact, let alone the 4th level troops, the dead teller can't even make up the full 3rd level troops. In such a large-scale death harvest of nearly 100,000, the 3rd level and 4th level soldiers obtained can't even fill a 2nd level undead wizard. It seems quite miserable. The dead teller has limited command power and can only accommodate less than 10% of the undead. The rest of them turned into groups of large and small wild monsters on the spot. Their camp is still neutral to players, friendly to Indians, and hates Europeans. Xiaoming is not satisfied with the effect of his magic this time. Maybe he can consider training the Q ability of low-level undead in the future. Although it is a low-level soldier, it is still shocking to see them neatly arranged. But the Native Americans don't think so. This is the 3rd time that Luque Tomato has watched a large-scale death harvest up close. He still feels extremely shocked. His favorability towards the dead is rising. If there are more people with this ability, the American continent will be completely saved. He is like this, let alone the other natives who were specially invited to watch the ceremony. They regard the dead as the savior and bow down to him. As a result, the dead have several more villages under their name. Hundreds of Indian residents. The large number of low-level undead that the dead have just received can just strengthen the troops of several villages. As a result, the number of undead soldiers in each village is n times more than the villagers. Fortunately, the friendship between these undead and the natives is very high. Otherwise, it might cause a big mess. Big brother, so many skeleton soldiers, what a waste. I only need. Xiao Sainer, who was operating the researcher, said to the informant. As an intelligent program, Xiao Sainer likes to maximize his benefits. In his opinion, such a large-scale death harvest is completely unnecessary. It should be harvested little by little, and a few hundred undead soldiers should be produced each time. In this way, all the harvested troops can be incorporated into the army. This can be fully utilized. Why waste so much magic power at once? And a lot of wild monsters were created to cause trouble for yourself. What he said actually makes sense. Harvesting and recruiting little by little is indeed in line with the maximization of the player's own interests. However, that does not conform to Xiao Ming's overall view. Xiao Ming's plan is to fill the American continent with these undead in a relatively short period of time. The method of stingy and searching for hundreds of troops at a time is not to his liking. Doing so will increase the troops too slowly. As long as the Eskant army sends one or several strong teams, they can eliminate the dead informers and researchers whose forces are not very strong. So time and quantity are very important. Only when the smoke of war spreads all over the American continent can the colonists lose sight of one thing and lose another. Only then can they fish in troubled waters. And with a large number of undead-friendly forces, I believe that the fire of Indian resistance to aggression will be ignited soon. The ancestors have all turned into undead and rebelled. Can the living descendants still lick their faces and not rebel? They won't be able to explain to their ancestors when they die in the future. Xiao Sainer's slow and steady playstyle will never achieve such an effect. Besides, neither the informer of the dead nor the researcher is particularly short of troops. The informer of the dead has the racial talent of primary skeleton troops recruitment, which can recruit the skeleton troops made by himself into the strategic forces. The recruitment amount is equivalent to the command power of the hero. The researcher has intermediate puppet research and development. It has the ability to independently develop, produce, and repair alchemical troops. The amount that can be produced every week is equivalent to twice the command power of the hero. It can be seen that both of them have a stable source of troops. Even if Xiao Ming does not go online, the intelligent program will not waste these shares. Therefore, there is really no need to keep an eye on the skeleton soldiers harvested by death. After all, Xiao Sainer is a spirit of intelligent programs, and the previous characteristic of being penny-pinching is still deeply imprinted in his mind. After listening to the explanation of Dad, I barely understood it. Intelligent programs do have serious flaws in the overall situation and world affairs. It is difficult for them to deeply understand morale, human heart, these seemingly illusory but real sociological concepts. Not to mention that they don't understand, even Xiao Ming himself is actually confused. Fortunately, he is a otaku, so it doesn't matter if he doesn't understand. Magic Planet Online Game. Author, Lanzai Cai Shi Zhen Shen. Chapter 1400. It only takes one large-scale death harvest for Luke Tomato to be convinced by the death teller. This strength is only stronger than the researcher. Especially the death teller, who can recruit thousands of undead soldiers at once, which seems even more amazing. Whether those undead are friendly forces or their own people, there is a big difference. Compared with wild monsters, the army under the unified command and dispatch of players or NPC heroes has a combat effectiveness that is several times higher. So Luke turned to become the Death Teller's follower, leading the Death Teller while recruiting natives for Taya. At present, the researcher and the Death Teller have just made a little name in this area. In addition to the Indians who saw the death harvest skill with their own eyes, those Indians who came here for the sake of fame inevitably have some doubts in their hearts. They don't know whether the news they heard from others is accurate. They suddenly found that there was a local snake like Luke in the team, so they hurried to ask about it. Oh, it turns out that the princess of the Inca Empire is also seeking to restore the country. This is really a case of someone sending a pillow when you are sleeping. So the natives who originally came here for the name of the dead researcher joined Taya's forces instead. This caused the first small climax of the rapid development of Kunyan Varus's forces. Of course, as time goes by, this trend will gradually turn to Xiaoming's side. After seeing several death harvests, these people will naturally lean towards the dead reporter little by little. By that time, I am afraid Liu Ke will be a little depressed. But for the time being, he can't feel this trend. Liu Ke continued to happily take the dead reporter to the next place where he can harvest. These days, Xiaoming can also feel that the map of the land in Central America is very different from the map of the land in East Asia. In China, and even in Japan, there are places that are properly managed by governments at all levels, so there are several checkpoints or fortresses in each map, guarding key intersections or important resource production areas. But this is not the case in America. The original countries of the American natives have been destroyed by colonists. Their remaining forces are not able to build a large number of checkpoints and fortresses. Due to the limited population, the colonists are more concentrated in coastal areas. They are also unwilling to build checkpoints or fortresses deep inland. The cost of maintenance is too high. Therefore, on the American continent, where checkpoints and fortresses should be set up, there are often only some wild monsters lingering. The strength is disgraceful. Players can basically move freely. Next, the researcher will no longer continue to travel with the dead. He plans to go east to the seaside and drive the fleet to Europe. After all, there is the most powerful shipyard on the strategic map, as well as the best technology and drawings. While the players are still far away from Europe, I will go and pick up some leaks first. If the appearance of East Asian humans makes it difficult for me to move in Europe. The researcher also has ancient transformation, which can transform into a half-orc, a fishman, or a Batman. There is always one suitable there. As far as Xiaoming knows, Europe at this time is also in chaos due to the impact of the great geographical discoveries. Half-orcs may really get along there. These days, Liu Ke and Xiaoming have actually been active in the periphery of the port of Veracruz. Veracruz is the base camp of the Escant army. What they did was actually very likely to cause the Escant army to launch a large-scale cleanup, which seemed not very wise. But then again, it was precisely because this was the base camp. How could others sleep peacefully beside the couch? So the Escant army implemented the most tragic and bloody rule nearby. Countless Indians were killed. This also created many places where large-scale death harvests could be launched. As long as Xiaoming moves fast enough, the sudden appearance of a large number of undead monsters will seal the Escant army in the base camp. The undead cannot go to sea, and Escant can still do business and become pirates. It's just that it can't continue to develop on land. Of course, he can also mobilize the navy to land and clear out these undead monsters. It depends on whether he is willing to do so. Such a large number of undead, although they are all low-level troops, can also play the role of ants biting elephants to death. If the players and the natives don't make trouble, the odds between Escant's army and the undead monsters are only 50-50. If he's lucky, he still has a chance to clear these undead. If he's unlucky, he might be destroyed by the undead. How dare Escant take such a risk? He can't even afford a 30% drop in military strength. After all, the Maldinard army is eyeing the sea. The naval/pirate forces of other countries are also infiltrating the New World. His army is the guarantee of his status. Once the loss is too great, Escant will not be able to maintain his position in the Caribbean and will soon be eaten up by other forces. So Xiaoming doesn't think Escant will fight to the death with the undead. The biggest possibility is to ignore the threats on land and defend the base camp Veracruz. Anyway, everyone's interests mainly come from the sea. The undead on land are the same threat to everyone. He doesn't have to work hard to clear them out alone. When the threat is serious enough, everyone can naturally sit down and discuss a solution. Escant did so. In addition, he had his own considerations. That was to worry about the mastermind behind the undead. Being able to summon so many undead monsters in a short period of time was not something that anyone could do. I'm afraid that hundreds or even thousands of high-level undead wizards would be needed. With this scale, they could fight a national war with the European powers. Could it be that some top boss of the undead clan is secretly plotting something? Eskent dared not confront the ghosts of the undead clan boss level by himself. Of course, he had to wait and see the situation first. He greatly restricted the actions of his troops on land. They were not allowed to go deep inland, and they were not allowed to take the initiative to fight with the undead monsters. As a last resort, when marching on land, they should also try to avoid the undead monsters. Such a restrained arrangement just gave the dead teller and the natives time to develop steadily. It can also be regarded as a fox pretending to be a tiger. When the native Indians were no longer exploited and killed by the Eskent army, they began to gradually recover. It's just that they have limited financial resources and it is difficult to develop the village. But the Indian villages that have joined the researcher or the dead teller are different. Xiaoming's financial resources are strong enough. As long as the conditions are met for various buildings, Xiaoming can come up with enough resources to build them. Money is not a problem. In the future, when these cities are built to a certain scale, they will play a leading role and attract countless Native Americans to join Xiaoming.